We have another busy day of NHL waiver wire activity with a new player on waivers for purpose of contract termination and another interesting right shot defenseman available for being picked up as well. Plus, we get news from regarding Muriel Heiskanen's injury, which will keep him out of Four Nations tournament. Plus, we have all the team captains named for the tournament as well. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have another busy day of NHL news. We're going to start with some more news from the NHL waiver wire. It's been a busy day of waiver activity this past week. Yesterday, we had Philipp Grubauer of the Seattle Kraken on waivers. As we discussed, he did clear. No big surprise because of the contract. Over $5 million with a couple more years left, and he hasn't had a .900 save percentage in going on 4 seasons. His last year in Colorado was amazing. His entire time in Seattle has not been great. Like I said, he has not cracked a .900 save percentage for an entire year as of yet. Joey Dufour, I think, is going to be taking over that on a long-term basis. We've already kind of seen it happening with Dufour getting ample kind of increased playing time gradually here. So Grubauer has been reassigned to the American Hockey League for Seattle. I think in the offseason he'll be a prime candidate for buyout if they can't find a cap dump type of trade with a sweetener attached to it. So we'll have to see on that front. Now today we have 2 more players on waivers. One is a repeat from a few days ago, and that's St. Louis Blues veteran winger Brandon Saad. This time, however, Saad is on unconditional waivers for the purpose of contract termination. So the St. Louis Blues, along with his agent and the player, have agreed to mutually agreement here to terminate the contract. So as we had previously discussed in the last 24 hours, Saad is foregoing a bunch of money here. He's betting on himself to get a fresh start somewhere else. Obviously, the contract was proving challenging situation to get him traded. The Blues had been trying to trade him for a number of weeks with no takers. They put him on waivers. Nobody picked him up. So originally the belief was he was going to go to the minors, but essentially they've talked and decided that this is the better route. So the St. Louis Blues get free from his cap hit. So they get a $4.5 million availability as a nice bonus to them. He gets to become an unrestricted free agent when he clears waivers tomorrow, and he can sign somewhere else for the remainder of the season. I suspect that, like we talked about, he's going to have lots of opportunity for different teams are going to want his services. They may not like him at $4.5 million, but if they can sign him for $900K, million, they will like him much better at that number, especially if it's only the remainder of the season. So I think that's the most likely scenario, is we see him sign for the rest of the year. He'll try to prove himself again that he can still play, and then maybe get a multi-year deal if possible, if he earns it in the offseason. So Brandon Saad on unconditional waivers today for contract termination. He will no longer be a member of the St. Louis Blues, and it will be foregoing just over $5 million in actual money that he will no longer be paid. Adam Boqvist of the Florida Panthers finds himself on waivers here today. He's a player I can see being picked up. He's 24 years old and he's a right shot defenseman with more offensive instincts. Obviously, defending is not his strongest part of his game. He's more of an offensive defenseman for sure. He's appeared in 18 games for the Panthers this year, putting up 6 points. He's dashed 4 on the plus minus, which I know isn't a great stat, but it does kind of show that obviously he's been on for more goals against than goals for, which is somewhat telling, but not shocking. With the Florida blue line not being as deep this year as it was last year, I'm a little surprised, but we've seen some players take on more of a bigger role with the Panthers than I kind of expected. I know going into the season, you're going to have your mainstays like your Aaron Ekblad, Gustav Forsling, Nico Mikkola. They were going to be, obviously holding down good spots and playing big roles. They brought back Kulikov. So he's going to have a decent spot there. The surprisers for me was Nate Schmidt and then Balinskis. So, obviously they've outplayed Boqvist and given the Panthers, but they feel a better chance to win when they're in the lineup. So, obviously at least guys like Adam Boqvist and Toby Bjornfoot kind of on the outside looking in. More often than not, Boqvist has played more than Bjornfoot, but obviously they're willing to part ways with him if he gets picked up. So Boqvist, like I said, he's only signed for the current season, $775,000. He'll be RFA as well. So this is a pretty low risk move for a team to pick him up. He was bought out of Columbus last year, so he came with obviously getting a little extra money from that contract through the buyout process. To me, there's lots of teams that will want to add depth on the right side with someone who can move the puck. I think there will be teams putting in a claim here. So I'll be surprised if Boqvist remains a Florida Panther by this time tomorrow. Outside of the waivers news, a couple other quick tidbits here before we wrap up the video. One, the injury to Waivers Heiskanen of the Dallas Stars is severe enough that it's going to keep him under the Four Nations tournament. Of course, the other night against the Vegas Golden Knights, Mark Stone and Heiskanen had a collision. I know it looked bad from Stone's perspective initially, but if you really watch the replay at the right angle, you can see a Dallas player, I can't remember which player it was, but the Dallas player coming out of the zone does trip Stone, and he kind of falls into Heiskanen. Either way, he goes hard into Heskanen's knee, leg area, and Heiskanen was fairly, hurt pretty bad. We don't know the exact timeline. It's more of a week-to-week scenario, but long enough with the tournament not too far away that he's not going to be participating. So that's a big blow for Team Finland, and big blow for the Dallas Stars too, of course, as they're pushing for not only playoffs, but to be near the top of the Western Conference, to have a good spot for the playoffs for home ice advantage. Speaking of Four Nations, we also learned all of the teams' captains were announced today. They had a gradual announcement process with the European teams coming first because of the time difference back in their countries. So we learned first that Barkov was going to be the captain of Team Finland. So obviously that's not a huge surprise. Captain of the Florida Panthers, won the Stanley Cup. I believe he's the only Finnish captain to ever win the cup in the NHL as well. So that's great news for them. Sebastian Aho, Mikko Rantanen, and Mikael Granlund are all going to be the alternate captains for Team Finland. Team Sweden has announced their captain to be Victor Hedman, the new captain this year of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Of course, Hedman, a long-time alternate captain, took over the captaincy after the departure of Steven Stamkos. Has done a fine job. Joining Hedman with the alternate letters, the A's on the jerseys will include Erik Karlsson, good buddy to Hedman. Of course, William Nylander, and Edmonton Oilers defenseman Matthias Ekholm. Team USA announced their captain to be Leaf captain Austin Matthews. A little bit surprised, to be honest. I know Matthews has got to see in Toronto. Obviously, he's a name that's a big name when it comes to goal scoring and whatnot, and he's a good promotional person. But given all the experience they had on that team, I'm a little surprised. I thought they might go with one of their more experienced players there, but either way, Matthews is the captain, with Charlie McAvoy and Matthew Tkachuk getting the A's. The European teams opted to go with 3 A's. The North American teams went with 2. The Canadian captain, no surprise, Sidney Crosby. I think everybody seen that one coming a mile away. The alternate captains for Canada will be Connor McDavid and Avalanche defenseman Cale Makar. So lots of great leadership all around. Those teams are filled with leaders, so you don't need a letter on your jerseys, to be a leader in a dressing room or on the ice. So the tournament's not getting it's getting closer now. We have a little bit more, a little bit more details on who the leaders are going to be. And of course, some teams like Finland now are going to have to name a replacement for Heiskanen. And of course, we're still waiting for Canada to announce a replacement for Pietrangelo. And there could be others. There could be other players pull out due to injury. So we'll see where things go on that front. So let me know your thoughts on today's news down in the comments. We'll be back a little bit later recapping the rest of the news and rumor mill from around the NHL today. So we'll discuss that a little bit later tonight. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.